Hello, lovely. Welcome to the Find a Lovely Life podcast, a safe place for all self love journeys. I'm your host, Monica Rodriguez, and for the past 9 years, I've been on my own self love journey. Healing can be really lonely, especially when you don't know where to start. So let's figure things out together. If you're looking for inspirational stories, conversations with some lovely souls, and a little life advice, I think you found the right place. Or maybe it found you. Let's try our best and find a lovely life together. I'll share some of my lovely life lessons along the way. Don't worry, you're safe here.
Well, hello there, lovely. It's been a while. Like always, I love a good hibernation, love a good winter, but we're like really into spring at this point. So I hope you had a good winter and I hope you had a good spring. May has always been a transition month for me. I never really know whether to call it spring or summer. It fools us into thinking summer has started, but it hasn't really. And so I want to catch up. It's been a while. There's been a lot going on in my life. Lots of lovely lessons learned. Lots of just reminders of things that I have come across in my self-love journey that, as always, like to share with you to see if it resonates. Maybe you are in the middle of a life transition right now and you're feeling stuck or frustrated or irritated that things aren't moving fast enough. But let's catch up first. Let's talk about what's been going on. So I've been navigating a lot of life logistics lately. I'm in the middle of this self-imposed 5-year plan that these days, what is the point of a 5-year plan anyway? But it helps keep me on track. I like having goals, knowing that I can readjust. I have learned time and again, I am very capable of pivoting in life, in creativity, in fill in the blank here. And I think still having some form of foundation and some sort of vision to move forward, knowing that I can pivot and will pivot and the universe might intervene and tell me I need to pivot. I think I've just been trying to find some way to keep building a life that I love amidst grief and life cycles and personal health issues that I've been navigating as well. And it just kind of keeps stacking all the way to the point where like I had a tower moment recently. And it just sort of reminded me how fluid 5-year plans need to be and how much we want to like keep moving forward in something, but then might need to adjust given life circumstances, given safety, given having to make decisions stupidly fast, annoyingly on your own. And sometimes it just takes a lot of survival mode to like reactivate. And let me tell you, I have been surviving my whole life, keeping my body alive, just, being single and just being independent in a way that this is just what life is for me. I handle things on my own because I know how to and I'm really good at it. Oh yeah. But we love some help. Anyways, I've been navigating all these things. I keep trying to prioritize myself and then I get knocked down and I get up again. And it's that song. That's my theme song. But what else am I going to do? Stay on the ground? No, I pick myself back up and I keep moving forward. But I have noticed, like in these past, 5 months since we've seen each other, talked to each other, that every time like life tends to happen and it's like cyclically, I just been dealing a lot with cycles. You know me, I'm a very seasonal person, but I also can tell when new chapters are coming pretty far out. And sometimes it's really annoying because I think it's happening right away, but I'm actually just sensing the change happening a season from now, a year from now. And so like adjusting to what I sense is happening, to being grounded, being present in the day-to-day reality of my life and figuring out how I can get from point A to point B. And sometimes realizing that part of transition and loving yourself in transition is knowing and understanding that point A to point B doesn't really exist. It's more point A to point E, if you're lucky, maybe even P, A to P, sometimes even A to Z. And I was recently doing a lecture for a cohort of writers. And one of my talking points is about the writing journey is realizing that, you're never going to get a complete story, everything that you need in a story, first draft and then done, right? This A to B mentality of perfectionism that I often and other writers sometimes struggle with. And as I was like saying the slide, I've given this presentation like a couple of times, but in this particular transition of life that I'm in right now, I felt like I was like talking to myself. A lot of times I'll give advice to writers and then I accidentally like brain spaz myself in the middle of the presentation, and it hits hard even for me. And this idea of being in transition and being uncomfortable in transition and trying to figure out how the heck do I even like love myself in transition. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about some of the things I've been prioritizing in my self-love journey right now. Some of the things I've been struggling with in my self-love journey right now. One of the things that I have found that I keep talking about in these like self-love check-ins, continuing that definition of self-love being having authority over your life and how you can practice authority in small ways. I have found by doing that, since I guess I've had been actively doing that for like a year now, right? Since I have been actively small ways doing that self-love practice of authority over my life, when a really big life event happened, I executed immediately and made difficult decisions and grieved. And it wasn't easy. I wasn't able to just like turn off the switch of like human emotion and like make these decisions that I needed to make for my life in that moment. But because I had been practicing authority over self and my life, it came more naturally. Not easy, because there's no such thing as like, I just don't think self-love is easy. It can come naturally when you continue to practice it over time and you open yourself up to your self-awareness, understanding yourself, knowing yourself, so that then you can love yourself better, just like you would love a partner, right? You are your own partner in this self-love journey. And so I noticed that because I had been practicing that and actively self-aware in authority over my life as a self-love practice, when life hit me, when life lifed, I was able to not make a decision out of fear, not make a decision out of just pure like mainly fear, right? Because I often say macro buckets, love or fear. So I recognized the tendencies of like these fears and anxieties of like, I got to make a decision now. Then I had the tools that I have that I've been practicing and was able to kind of take a step back. Thankfully, because of that grounded 5-year plan fantasy, it's not a fantasy. It's only a fantasy because in today's world that we live in, things just change so rapidly that I think the idea of a 5-year plan is ridiculous, but I'm still doing it because it's important for me to be able to have goals and a trajectory path. Are 5-year plans still possible today? Yes. You're just going to have to take a lot more side quests. You're going to have to pivot more, and you're going to have to work with yourself to understand that some of the things that you want to happen right away might not be able to happen because of the extra amount of external circumstances beyond our control. And that's just the reality of life that we're in, right? But in that practice of self-love, I was able to make radical decisions for myself without needing to ask permission. Sometimes I have this tendency and habit, and it came from a lot of my people pleasing and just needing to kind of like not necessarily. I talk about this exercise that my therapist had made me do when I first started working with her about writing down all the voices that I would hear in my head as like a cast of characters in a play. And it took like 5 pages. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. It took like 5 pages to get to my voice. And 5 years later, I feel like immediately I hear my voice first, which is like a huge effort in work and trying to not only call to awareness what those voices were, who they were, where they came from, heal them, take power back, and then continue to kind of like practice hearing my own voice. And that just takes time. But I realized that I wasn't seeking outside validation because a lot of the people that I was asking for validation for or asking advice for, I realized at the end of the day, they weren't the right people to be asking advice for. And a lot of these people had the idea of who I was 2 years ago. And something that I've been actively practicing as well is just checking in with myself to make sure that the support that I want in my life honors who I was, but can also see me as who I am today, which can be difficult for many reasons. But we always talk about honoring both past versions and who we are now to kind of set us up for future you, right? And this beautiful triangle. She knows her shapes anyways. And sometimes it can be hard or it can feel friction or tension when people can't see you outside of the person that you were 2 years ago when you've already evolved into like 4 other versions of yourself. And sometimes I have felt like it's easier to compartmentalize the relationship or let it go. And oftentimes when that happens, new boundaries come up, right? Because you're acting as the transition of this new person on the other end of it. And that's why relationships can be a bit complicated. And it's so important to understand the relationship that you have with yourself so that you can have more empathy towards other people and their own transitions. And I think it can be difficult to understand someone in the middle of a transition, or maybe you're in transition and someone feels like they've exponentially grown too fast and you can't keep up with them. And it can trigger some form of like abandonment in that sense. But I like to see it as like a cycle closing. And I always know that a new season is coming into your life. Or one of the cues or signs that I tend to realize, oh, I'm entering a new chapter, is I meet new characters. Similar to like in a TV series, season 2, we have a couple new characters. Sometimes we have this like B story side character thing happening. But when I'm in a transition, one of the key things that I notice, and I feel like nothing's moving myself, like my life's not moving, but one of the things you can notice that the universe is supporting, it just moves a little bit slower sometimes. That's okay. We're working on understanding this speed because they can be different for different reasons. And sometimes I feel like when I feel like things aren't moving or I'm in transition, one of the things I feel like the universe likes to remind me, like, no, things are moving. I'm just moving really slowly. They'll send new characters into my orbit, or sometimes they'll float back old characters to see how I respond to them as like mirrors and opportunities of reflections to help you see how far you've come. And it's never real. I don't like to say it's like a test. It's just an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to see who you were through that person, however much time had passed, and then take that as a just like really loving moment of I needed them at a certain point in my life. And now maybe in this transition and this new chapter, it doesn't align or it doesn't make sense. And I'm working on and that is enough. Like, I don't have to try to figure out why, prove myself to them, apologize profusely, prioritizing myself and keeping higher boundaries to protect my peace, especially during a time in my life where a lot of my foundations have been like shaken up. That seems to be like a theme. Just lots of foundation. Like, I build things and then they like Jenga fart themselves down and we just keep rebuilding. And I think part of that transition that I feel that I've come to terms with is the uncomfortableness of it has a lot to do with avoiding grief. And it's not just grief of a person. In my self-love journey, I have found, I grieve past versions of myself, but I've also come to terms with grieving timelines or steps in life that I wanted to happen first in order for something else to happen, and like this domino effect. And so a lot of the tension that I have felt in the past when it comes to loving myself in transition is avoiding the grief part of it. And so one of the things I've been doing lately in my self-love journey is facing the grief head on, which is even more uncomfortable than avoiding it. But it is part of the human experience, and I believe that grief is a form of love. It's a very thick and difficult part of it, but it is a form of it. And so experiencing it however the wave comes, I think is part of self-love, because you're allowing yourself to process one of the most difficult human emotions in this life while still loving yourself in the journey of becoming the person that you're meant to be. You know how I always like to define things? And so when I was like thinking about what I wanted to talk about this episode in summary of just like everything that's been going on in my life and maybe some things that have been going on in yours that could resonate with you in your self-love journey, it's just the word transition. And, I like defining things. And so I will read you the definition that I found online. Shout out Merriam-Webster. Transition is a process or period of changing from one stage, state, place, or condition to another. It represents a bridge or a shift between 2 points, whether in time, appearance, geography, or subject matter. And I think when, at least for me personally, I don't know about you, I go through transitions and new chapters in life so often that I feel like I should be a pro at this by now, but it's never easy. It may come naturally and you might have a programming of like, oh, I know how to activate this survival guide. But I have had chapters in my life or transitions in my life where it's like a transition in geography, a transition in subject matter, a transition in appearance, a transition in it's like isolated. But for some reason, it's been like everything. Like transition and everything. And so it's been quite challenging, just a little bit, just a little challenging. Doesn't mean that I don't face it head on, because what else am I going to do? Just sit there and not do it? That's just not like me. So I think I've been practicing actually not compartmentalizing the transitions and seeing how everything works together as one. Sometimes when you're in transition, it can be less of a burden to deal with one thing at a time. And I do approach things like that. But other times when things keep happening, you can't help but I just have like extreme pattern recognition, and everything just sort of flows together for me in a way to help me understand. And so when things start kind of eroding and foundations start getting knocked down and you have no choice but to rebuild, I think it can be really difficult to love yourself, because not only are you trying to just survive, you're also literally being met with a transitional period where you have no choice but to change. And so at least some of the things I have been trying to do to not necessarily slow it down, but allow myself to process what's happening. And maybe this can help you too if you're in a state of transition. Talk about it a lot, but journaling. I talk to myself a lot because I have to in order to process the things that are happening to me. When I first started therapy, and I think I'm going to do like a whole self-tool about how I approach therapy, and maybe that can be helpful for some people. But when I first started therapy, it was because I was in a major life transition. I was leaving my structured 9 to 5 and without a plan, which is very much unlike me. And I just felt like, as the eldest daughter, I always have a plan, and I didn't have a plan. And I was looking for some sort of blueprint or guidance because all my life, I've always had to be the one to build my own blueprint, which I journaled recently is one of the reasons why I have zero tolerance for incompetency. I've been navigating a lot of incompetent people of late, and I just don't have time for it. And one of the other self-love advocacy things that I'm telling myself is not just a boundary, but just a universal new law of Monica is I cannot emotionally labor you anymore. I think in a lot of roles that should have never been my intention, but I think because that was the programming that was given to me, it has taken a lot of time to kind of call back a lot of the ways that I show up in friendships, relationships, whether that's romantic, work, and just kind of take a look at what is nourishing me. Because that's my word this year. And every time I pick a word, it just slaps me in the face. But I've been trying to go through having nourishment teach me things beyond food and body, and because that was the first thing that I thought of, right? But nourishing in the sense of, am I spending time with this person, and is this person nourishing me? And if the answer is I don't know, then maybe I might stick around to find out. But I've also kind of been practicing or giving myself permission to practice of, do you want to stick around to find out right now? And if the answer is like this, like shy, well, not right now. Well, no shit, because you have a bunch of stuff going on in your life. It's okay to pause. And if somebody asks, like, you can tell them that you have a lot of stuff going on in your life. Not that you need permission to give too many details. Like, I've also kind of stopped oversharing because that was also a trauma response for me. And I've just been practicing being selective on what's nourishing me and prioritizing my needs and some of the tools while in transition to help me kind of like anchor to, because I'd rather anchor to the word nourish than transition. I don't think I will ever pick transition as a word of the year because it will find me on its own no matter what I do. So they can do whatever they want to do. But some of the things that have been nourishing for me are ceramics. I've been taking a bunch of pottery classes recently. Oh my gosh, I guess I've been doing it for almost 3 months now. But I just hit a really hard writing wall again. And it was impacting my creativity. I was going through a lot of changes. And so my regular routines and patterns just were not resonating or fitting with how fast my body was changing, how fast my life was moving. And so I kind of had to like take a step out of my routine and ritual and find something new to creatively touch. Because the art that I practice in writing is very mental. And sometimes, I mean, it can be, pen to paper if I touch it, but I just needed to touch some art. I needed to play with mud. And I've learned so much from clay and ceramics these past 2 months and myself as well. But it has been nourishing me in a creative way. And I always like to tell people that if you do hit a creative wall, because I don't like to say that it's a roadblock or writer's block. It's just you're burnt out and your creative well is dry. So you need to refill that creative well, and it needs to be in a medium or art form outside of the thing that you're trying to like feed. And so for me, I had to get out of writing for a little bit and go feed my creative well through ceramics. It's been an interesting parallel, like all things in life, in my life, pattern recognition, connecting dots. But clay is so transformative. And my teacher would say, like, clay has memory. And so when you move the clay and you mold the clay and then you have to let it dry, it's just this very slow, intricate, very expensive hobby process that helped me see something transform while I was in the middle of transitioning life. And it helped ground me. It's a very earthly, creative thing. I feel like writing is very air, fire based, and I needed some sort of creativity that was water and earth to literally balance me out. Wow, I just made that connection. And it has grounded me a lot. Have I started writing again yet? Nope. But that's okay, because I'm in transition, and that's part of the process, is being gentle with that transition and still loving myself in that creative well. She was dry. She needed some earth and water. But clay goes through many processes, and it's like, it's this block, and then you shape it, and then you mold it, and then you put texture on it, and then you make sure it doesn't dry out or crack, and you're very delicate with it. And then it's like leather dry, and then it's bone dry, and then it goes in the kiln and it gets bisque fired. So that's like a first firing, and then you glaze it, and then you fire it again. And then it's like, in all of those process and all those steps, anything can happen. And a lot of times when I was like making something, I had the goal, I had this vision, and then it would either turn into something else as I was like molding it, or it would break or crack and turn into something else. And I just thought it was like a very hilarious haha joke from the universe, metaphor of the life that I was in the middle of transitioning, and how, you know, you can have a vision and art always mimics life, or life imitates art and vice versa. But it was just helpful to see, because sometimes a lot of what's difficult in the self-love journey is you can't really see change, especially if you're in the middle of a transition between two versions of yourself. It's often not until we get to the other version of ourselves that we can see the actual change. And so pairing that difficult transition period that I've been in, or challenging, I won't say difficult, it's just been challenging and frustrating as fuck. But nonetheless, if we persevere, it was just helpful to have something to, like, if I couldn't control my life, I could at least try to control or mold clay that would then humble me. So that's been nourishing me. It's a love-hate relationship. I also been doing this thing called, well, another thing I do when I feel overwhelmed or maybe bored with my routine, or just feeling like I'm stuck or stagnant, I remind myself that I have free will, and I do things to exercise that free will. So sometimes I will say, I was doing this thing, I was like, let's start a little bit at a time, right? Free will Wednesdays. Well, the self-love dates that I was planning that I've talked about here before was a practice of free will. But these felt like I needed to like do something off. Like, one day I decided I wanted to make gnocchi because I've been learning Italian, and I wanted wine. I don't drink that often, but I was like, I want wine. And then I had the idea of, well, okay, maybe I'll just add it to my grocery list. And I was like, no, that's too typical. So I just drove to my local wine bar and bought a bottle of wine and left. And that was enough of a out of matrix decision mode free will for that day. And it satisfied me. And then dinner I made myself was amazing and the wine was great. And it's just practicing little things like that where you recognize a need or a desire, and then you challenge yourself a little bit by asking, how else can I fulfill this need or desire that's not a typical way that I maybe would have done before? And it's those small changes of habit that recognize our brain pattern recognition and programming to start to shift and open opportunities for you to see things in different ways and love yourself in different ways. And I've also been reading a lot more nonfiction, or at least trying to. I was having this conversation about my writing with my therapist, and she pointed out, maybe you just want something real. Because I've been having trouble with fiction, and I don't know, I'm just like in this point where my medicine is truth, and sometimes people, it makes them uncomfortable, and I've past the point of like caring if my medicine is too strong for you or not. But I also was realizing that I just am tired of performing. I'm tired of these blanketed, like, just, it's the same shit every day, the same self-help shit, the same spiritual bullshit. It's not real enough for me. So I've been nourishing myself with more truth, with more human experience, with more grounded things like clay to help me understand myself better, to love myself better in transition. Because oftentimes I feel like fantasy or delusion or anything in like mental airspace is not grounded enough to physically change your reality. You have to actually do something about it. And sometimes that involves being human. I hate to break it to you, but you're a human being in a human body. So sometimes you actually have to be human, emotionally, physically, mentally. And so that's been helping me, that's been nourishing me, is coming back to myself in a coming back to my body type of way. I've talked about this a little bit on the podcast. I feel like for 5 years now, I've been on this like cycle syncing journey with my menstrual cycles, and that's been really helpful. That's been nourishing me, listening to my body in that way. And then in an odd way, logistics of life have nourished me. Like I said, when things are out of my control, but I still feel like I can move the needle in some way, push forward, I think safety is always like the first sort of block that we have, right? And so if it means having to create more safe space for me or make decisions life logistics wise that promote my safety more, then I'm going to lean into it because that's been really nourishing me lately. And then like allowing myself to grieve, whether it's like about my dog, about my life and the decisions that I wanted to make, but life hasn't given me those opportunities to make those decisions yet, or just finding a way to balance preparing for receiving things that I have asked for while still remaining present. I feel like that's a big transition thing that I've been working on as well. And I think when I'm in transition, a lot of past versions of myself come up naturally, especially because transition involves, at least in your self-love journey, that bridge, right? Between two versions of yourself. It's not really quite a past version, and you're not really quite the future version, but you're also not like fully present. You're like morphing. It's like your butterfly wings are still wet. And I felt like my butterfly wings have been wet still this whole spring, just with life. But if you are in transition and you feel tension between two versions of yourself, and maybe it's not necessarily that you can pinpoint, 15-year-old me and 18-year-old me, or 18-year-old me and me now, or that sort of thing. Maybe archetypes might help in that sense. But if you feel tension, I want to ask you to ask yourself, which one of you is pulling the rope? Is it them or is it you? and which part of you wants to stay and not transform and not change and not transition. And then I want you to ask yourself, why? Why does that version not want to change or transition? Because asking these questions is going to lead to loosening the tension that you have between yourself in the relationship with yourself. You are building relationship with yourself. That's what the self-love journey is. You don't want to pull the rope and like when someone pushes a dog in the water to like learn how to swim. We don't want to do that. We have had enough trauma. There's no need to give ourselves more trauma. Like the world will give us enough trauma, okay? But you also don't want to like yank her in, right? Like you just don't want to rush the process, and you also don't want to let go of the rope. You don't want to abandon her either. So there's this like delicate balance, and the way to achieve that balance is by gently asking those questions, to sit with them, have the rope have slack, and just have a conversation with that version of you that is hesitant to change. And I guarantee you that once you kind of allow yourself to open up to yourself, the tension will feel less anxious, less we need to solve this problem now, less we can't go here. And then I like to backtrack. If somebody or past version of me says, well, we can't do this until we do this. Well, who told us we can't do that? And until we do this, why? And so the secret sauce is building that trust with yourself, so then you can kind of milk out the self-awareness and start to create a new bridge together into your transition. That's the love, right? Because like the story or the messy part, or like, oh, she can't catch a break. Well, it's not that's not what it is. It's that the plot is thickening, and this is actually where the good stuff happens. And I might not be able to see it right now, but when I look back, I can guarantee you I'll be able to like put the pieces together and understand why I didn't want to let go, how I gently loved her to help us continue forward, or just wait at the train stop for then maybe someone else to come and help us keep moving forward as well, and being open to that as part of your self-love journey and not having it always be like on your own, right? So looking ahead, I think for a self-love check-in, future me, I'm hoping is still exercising authority over her life, because that's like the secret sauce to self-love. It's like, do I have authority here? Do I not? Why do I not have authority in this part of my life? How can I get my power back? That is a form of love, getting your power back. And then I always do this thing in the summers where like, the Roman woman thing that I talk about all the time. I'm trying to she's an archetype that I helped build, which is another self-love tool of like building archetypes of like who I aspire to be, and then living a little bit like them to become them. Then I'm like, why am I only saving her for the summer? Why is she like on reserve? Why can't I just be her all the time? So I'm going to workshop that a little bit. I think that's my goal for the summer. And like always to just like relax, just like try to, oh no, I keep saying try to relax, but like one does not try to relax. They just relax. So that's the other thing. I guess that's the other thing I'm going to try to work. No, I'm not going to try. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to language. That's what I'm working on, word choice. That's what I'm going to be working on as well. But I was cleaning out. I was like, what card should I pull? But I was cleaning out some of my books in my apartment, and I forgot I had this beauty. I don't think I've used this in a long time. I got this at a bookstore in New York. It was like the only one there. It was like perfect for me. It's called Fortunate. I'll put the link in the description. But I'm just going to flip to it and read us a poem, because I feel like that's a little bit gentler. It'll still probably read us to filth. But I just wanted to offer a poem to close us out in this transition. Let's see what the universe wants to tell. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. It's gonna read us to filth. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Okay, we got the Eight of Swords. So the poem goes, your prison or hell is created by you and you alone. Holding you back are negative lies, limiting beliefs, and formless thoughts. You feed into them, and they feed into you. It's time to flee the mental cage that you bound yourself in and ease the blindfold that makes the world seem so dim. Find beauty in the small moments of life. Get out of your head and fall into love. Can't make this shit up, folks. Read it, men, weep 'em. Well, I'm gonna need some time to process that slap in the face. But I hope those words were comforting, or at least, what's the word I'm looking for? At least a confirmation, or sometimes I like to take signs and just say, the universe did hear me. Oh, look, you know I'm suffering. Great. I'm glad you're watching the show. But no, yeah, get out of your head and fall into love. Loving yourself in transition can be really difficult. But no, we're not saying difficult. We're saying challenging. It can be challenging, but self-love is action. And when we step up to the challenge, it's much more natural to love ourselves. And as if that wasn't enough, I'm going to do another lovely letter. I hope you're still recovering from that poem. I am. One of those things like a brain fart of I needed to hear it. So I hope you did too. That was so aggressive. So we're going to gently end this. We're going to sandwich it with a little love. Okay? With a little lovely letter. I thought the perfect one to remind us of this is, dear lovely, you are doing enough. Dear lovely, you're doing enough. Let me say that again. You are doing enough. Every step you've taken, every word you've written, every minute you've dedicated, you are doing enough. You are doing what you can. Look how far you've come. But there's so much more to do. You've become accustomed to always working, crossing things off your to-do list, but adding more in the process. It's honestly never ending. There's so much to do. I know. I bet you have so many ideas, multiple to-do lists. You have big dreams. Keep dreaming. Just don't forget, you're already doing a lot. Be patient with yourself. Not everything is going to happen at the same time. Sometimes we have to lay down the foundation in order to keep building. You can only juggle so many balls. I know you're superhuman because you're super awesome, but no one is waiting for you to complete everything by the end of the day or even tomorrow. Unless it's actually due tomorrow and you've been procrastinating. What are you still doing here? Go do it. Come back when you're done. But why is it never enough? Sometimes we are programmed by past trauma or words that have buried themselves within our livelihood. This prevents us from feeling like what we are doing is never enough. I've been there. When I write, create, work hard, and don't get the promotion, I feel like it's never enough. Maybe I have to work harder. Not always. The point is, keep trying. The point is, you're doing enough. Every day will come with new to-do lists and new challenges. What matters is that you take every day, one day at a time. Don't rush. There's no such thing as a finish line, remember? I want you to make a new list. Let's call it your things I have done list. Whether the first thing you write is that you got out of bed this morning, completed a reading for class, did laundry, wrote a few pages, kept writing, got groceries, write it down. I don't care what the accomplishment is. I just want you to keep that list going. Make it at the end of the day or at the end of the week. Better yet, whenever you feel anxiety creeping in, make a things I have done list and breathe. Always remember to breathe. You're doing the best you can. You are doing enough. With love, Monica.
And that's the episode. I hope you're inspired to love yourself a little more than you did yesterday. and you're on your way to finding a lovely life you love. If you want to read more about my self love journey, head over to findalovelylife.com. Subscribe, rate, and share this podcast if you feel called to. Remember that your self love journey can start or restart at any point. There are no rules. Stay connected with us on social at Find a Lovely Life, or if you want to see more of Monica Life, you can find me at Lovely Monica, and that's spelled LOVELEEMONICAA. I'll say goodbye for now. Thanks for listening. Until next time.